Good afternoon, everyone. It looks like we have a quorum today. I'm going to ask Jessica Bechtel to run us a quick quorum check, member check, and that way we can begin. Just in case you don't know, I'm Jessica McMullen. I'm Policy and Communications here with PPACG, and I'm helping out a little bit just with air quality until we get our new environmental person on hand, since the wonderful Samantha Bailey got stolen by the city, although we may let her talk. Andy Gunning is here. He's our executive director, and Jessica Bechtel is also here. I'm going to be as invisible as possible. I'm sick. I'm trying. Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, Jessica, for kicking us off. And Jess, did you want to do a quick roster quorum check for us, and then we'll kind of get started?
Sure thing. So with that, we're going to call this meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. And I'm just going to name off who I have seen. And then if I miss anybody, just let me know so that I can include you in our minutes here. I can see we have Monty McVeigh, Marla Lucky, Jarek Craik, Megan Dunlap, Kevin Shrewsbury, Samantha Bailey, Richard Coffin from CDPAG. We have a Victoria on the line, but I didn't catch your last name. So if you'll let me know what that is, either in chat or just shout. And then
Jessica, it's Victoria Chavez.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
All right, perfect. Gotcha. All right. So if I missed anybody, let me know or send me a message. With that, a couple of housekeeping things. We ask that you keep yourself muted when you're not speaking to reduce the noise in the background for us. And if you're making any motions, I don't think we have any action today, just besides approving minutes. But if you make a motion, to state your name for the minutes in the recording. All right. With that, we will move on to public comments. I did not receive any. I'm not sure if we have anybody from the crowd or the public here that wants to speak up, but now is the chance for that.
If there aren't any takers, Jess, just a couple of comments real quick, if I could. Good to see everybody again. As Jessica mentioned, she's going to be helping out, kind of pinch hitting a little bit. She and I probably both, and Jess Bede, organized meetings of the AQTC. We were saddened to lose Samantha, but she had a great opportunity over at the City of Colorado Springs. It's our intent to move forward with filling our environmental planner position as expeditiously as we can, but there was another position we kind of had to get in place first before we could get started with recruiting for that one. So appreciate your patience. If you have any questions, any inquiries at all about air quality related stuff, in the meantime, feel free to reach out to Jessica McMullen or to myself, either one of us, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction or answer whatever questions you might have. Obviously, we're gearing up for this summer's ozone season. Don't know what the future holds there, but a lot of work in front of us, I'm sure. And I bring that up because it kind of relates to the work. Samantha did a great job laying the groundwork with approval by the committee and then approval by our board for the Ozone Advance program. Since Jessica M is sort of down for the count a little bit today, was going to see if we could maybe push that item off. Was on the agenda for today for discussion, but maybe we put a pin in that, bring it back at next month's meeting. We can schedule a meeting for May and take people's comments and suggestions as far as activities that we want to get organized around for the Ozone Advance program, and do that next month if that's okay with everybody. Okay, Jess, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, so with that, if there's no other public comments, we'll move on to action item number 3, which is your approval of the November 19th, 2021 minutes. I can pull those up if you guys need to review them further. That's those here. And if I could get a motion for approval, if there are no changes, that would be great.
Katie Helm, my motion to approve.
Kevin Shrewsbury, second.
Perfect, thank you. All in favor, everybody good? All right. So with that, we will move on to presentation, which is item number 4. And we have CDPAG, APCD employee traffic reduction program. And I believe we have Richard Coffin on the line for that. So I'm going to go ahead and give you permission to share your screen for that. So bear with me one second here. Kind of running a few things at once. I'm going to stop my share.
And while you're doing that, Jess, thank you, Rick, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And I know you're going to focus primarily on the employee traffic reduction program. Not sure if you're ready to kind of say a few words about kind of the overall roadmap for emissions reductions as well. I know there's going to be proposals brought to the State Air Quality Control Commission in May with adoption. We're thinking in August, and we can maybe either talk about that today or we can bring that back for the meeting in if that works out better. But so I'll leave that to you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time there, Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Can you all hear me okay and see my screen?
Yes.
Good, glad that worked. Yeah, so as far as the overall transportation rulemaking, there, maybe I could talk about it a little bit, but I know that some of the other aspects are still like very much in the developmental phase, and I'm not as involved with those particular aspects as I have been with this ETRIP. So, I mean, definitely I can come prepared to talk about it at the next meeting. The other thing, the other thing is that I could also share a link to our website with information about like the public listening sessions. Actually, there's one scheduled for tonight, and it will be led by both folks from CDOT and APCD to talk about all the various aspects of the rulemaking. I think that one starts maybe at 6 or 7. I could check after my presentation, but yeah, we're actually double booked tonight. We've done quite a bit of outreach, and I guess I could transition into talking about ETRIP here. But yeah, so it's good to see you all. Good to see Andy and some familiar faces and names on the screen here. I'm Rick Coffin. I'm a planner with the Air Pollution Control Division. And today I'll be talking a little bit about the Employee Traffic Reduction Program, or ETRIP. And before I get started, I think initially this was being considered as a statewide measure, but then just in the last month or so, a decision was made to only focus on the Denver North Front Range ozone non-attainment area. So I think initially when I reached out to folks from PPACG and not only AQTC but the other like the Community Advisory Committee and the TAC, we were thinking it would be possibly also included as a measure like outside of the non-attainment area, but currently it's only being considered for the non-attainment area, just to be clear about that. So today I'll talk about a little bit about the background of the rule, and I think it's still a good thing to talk about for Colorado Springs for a few different reasons. There are some existing activities down there, I think through Mountain Metro Transit. This was discussed in more detail at this month's TAC meeting. And I think, there's opportunities maybe to build upon that program to, and perhaps, maybe even incorporate this into your Ozone Advanced program when it's updated for the next version of the plan. So I just wanted to put that out there, and we could talk about that more at the end of the presentation. So, as you know, currently the Denver Metro North Front Range area does not meet the federal air quality standards for ozone, and it's actually being redesignated as a severe non-attainment area by EPA, and transportation is a significant source of ozone precursors and greenhouse gases. So ETRIP was initially worked on as an ozone control strategy or measure specifically for the Denver non-attainment area. And the Regional Air Quality Council, or RAC, led those efforts starting about a year ago. And over the course of the last year, they've held a series of work group meetings to develop a framework for an ETRIP rule. And this is the current process. So we've had quite a bit of stakeholder meetings, just to really get feedback from the public, from businesses, from elected officials. We've had even more meetings that aren't listed on here, like small group meetings with chambers of commerce, and then also meetings that occurred before April. And we've actually had at least over 20 meetings, and I think we have another like 9 or 10 scheduled. So I think it might break the record for most stakeholder meetings related to a rulemaking process for us. Not sure about that, but I think so. And yeah, basically we're, taking in all these comments and refining the proposal based on those considerations. So the Air Quality Control Commission is a governor appointed group that has the authority to adopt air quality regulations in Colorado. And our schedule is to go before them in May for a request for hearing. And then the actual rulemaking hearing will be in August. So as far as ETRIPs, they're not a new idea or novel concept. There's at least 27 successful mandatory programs throughout the United States in a range of different areas throughout the state of Washington, also in Portland, Oregon, in lots of different areas of California, ranging from like LA, which has, I think something like 16 or 17 million people, to some of the smaller areas that have, I think, even 20,000 people. So it's also found in different parts of like the Midwest, Minnesota, Arizona, up and down the East Coast, and also in Texas. So it's not specific just to the extra large cities. It's been implemented in a range of areas. And basically it requires that large employers develop and implement a plan to reduce the number of single occupancy vehicle trips, or SLOV trips, by employees to and from the work site. And it will apply to an employer's work site in the Ozone non-attainment area for companies that have 100 or more employees. So again, it's only going to be in the Denver area or the non-attainment area. And then some transportation management associations, or TMAs, within the Front Range already offer voluntary commute reduction programs like DRCOG's Way to Go. And the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization also offers like van pooling and things like that. So ETRIP is not a ban on commuting to perform work duties. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not a way to force commuters over to carpools, transit, or bikes. And it's not meant to limit travel for other activities such as shopping, taking kids to work, or entertainment. So basically, companies will be required to identify a point person to develop and implement an ETRIP plan, and they'll be called an Employee Transportation Coordinator, ETC. And they'll be required to administer an employee survey to assess commuting modes and practices that basically will work for their specific company and their specific location based on the needs of their employees. and there will be an annual reporting requirement. And the timeline is basically early to mid 2020 to assign the ETC and complete the initial employee survey, and then mid 2022 to develop and implement an ETRIP plan, submit the first report, and then by mid 2023 to achieve the initial reduction goal. So employers can achieve the employee SLOV commute reduction goal by implementing a range of measures. Telecommuting is usually one of the best and least costly to implement. Flexible compressed work schedules are also a good one. Public transit benefits and subsidies, ride sharing, shuttles, parking management, commuting services. And, you know, I just want to speak to this a little bit because some of the comments we've received from some companies and, you know, and some of the things we've learned when we've been talking to TMAs and also companies that have had successful ETRIP programs in other areas is that companies can usually find like the right combination of different strategies to meet the goal. So, you know, really taking public transit isn't going to work for everyone. It's probably only going to work for a small percentage of folks. And then depending on the type of position, telecommuting may or may not work. That may be limited to a small number of employees depending on the type of company, or, you know, another company, it may be a majority of folks who could work from home. And, you know, same thing for the other types of strategies. So it's, you know, it really ranges, but there have been lots of successful cases, such as the ones listed on this slide. So, you know, we have a couple in Colorado, or a few in Colorado up here that basically, you know, made great success in reducing their SLOV commute rate. And, you know, as you can see, the ones in Colorado, currently there's no required program to do this. And the companies did this, you know, on their own, basically accord to reduce their overhead costs. So basically, like the benefits of ETRIP, which I'll discuss on the next slide, are enough incentive for companies to, you know, kind of go out on their own and see, hey, how can we do this, you know, to reduce some of our overhead costs and, you know, have also implement or introduce benefits for our employees. That's better for the overall mission and operations of the company. And then a really good example is from Seattle, their children's hospital, because they were basically able to avoid building a very expensive parking garage while achieving a great SLOV reduction rate. So in addition to GHG and ozone reductions and helping to reduce traffic congestion, ETRIP can provide the following benefits, like reduced overhead costs. So, you know, right now we're seeing with COVID, if companies can have folks work from home, maybe they don't need as much space. Maybe they can downsize, or maybe they could have more of a shared workspace. And, you know, this also can mean, you know, if you're staying in the work building and just downsizing, or maybe if people are coming in less, it's less cost for like keeping up with parking lot maintenance and things of that nature. Enhanced employee recruitment and retention. You know, in some industries, like having things like telecommuting and flex work or compressed schedules being offered is, you know, kind of seen as being offered by an employer of choice. It's being more and more common. And, you know, some of these are expanded benefits at low or no cost to the employer. Also an enhanced corporate and public image, and then reduced employee stress and enhanced productivity. There's a very long list of recent studies that back up, you know, that second to last bullet there. It's just when people are driving more often and in traffic for long periods of time, it really takes a toll on health and happiness. And then also it can increase employment opportunities for the disabled and others not able to meet traditional work hours. So, you know, with all that said, I wanted to talk a little bit about voluntary considerations specific for your area. And, you know, so obviously ETRIP, as we've seen, it can help reduce traffic congestion despite increased population. And we've seen this in other areas of the country, like California and Washington State. And I think that most of the folks in here probably are aware of some of these other bullet points that are listed here, but you know, Colorado Springs is definitely like seen as a nice place, a desirable place to live. I know I have some colleagues who live down there and friends and actually family who live down there. And like most parts of Colorado, it's projected to see increased population, 45% between now and 2050. And based on your PPACG long-range plan, moving forward in 2045, I think there was a study that found that congested roadways increased by 12% between 2011 and 2015. And then I pulled up some traffic count data from CDOT's online data portal, just for the available traffic count locations in the area for 2015 to 2019. And there was a 20% increase in traffic counts from, you know, over those 4 years. And then we also saw an average of 13% decrease in traffic counts between 2019 and 2020 due to COVID, which is pretty standard. On any given day now, in most places of the state, traffic is still down about 10% when compared to pre-COVID numbers. But I don't know, there's been some articles that have been published saying that that's expected to actually creep back up to normal levels maybe by the end of this year. And there might even be like a rebound effect, so it might even increase a little more because people are going to be going out more and doing more. I think that typically happens after there's a big decline. So we'll see. So, you know, basically doing something like ETRIP can help maybe maintain some of these reductions. And then also, you know, kind of the spirit of an initiative like this aligns with goals and objectives and in your long range plan and the Ozone Advanced Plan. I wanted to highlight some emissions, and I think I grabbed this from the Ozone Advanced Plan, but you can see that the colors aren't the best because it's, you know, the scheme, but highway vehicles is a darker orange color here, and you can see it's a significant source of NOx and VOC, which of course are ozone precursors. And then I think you've seen this before. I think I grabbed this from maybe the Ozone Advanced Plan, or maybe the presentation that Gordon Pierce gave to your board recently. But as you can see, you know, the trends are going down, but the area has been very close to the standard. And I think this exceedance up here is due to wildfire impacts, which, you know, wouldn't apply if exceptional event demonstrations are submitted and concurred with by EPA. But in any case, I think the last two slides show that, you know, there is some concern about ozone levels and that transportation is a, you know, a big piece of the pie for the area. And then, you know, even though this ETRIP is only being considered for the non-attainment area, you know, we welcome all comments from anyone and everyone statewide if you have any thoughts about it. I know the commission appreciates comments as well, and you know, there's ways that you can get involved. I can post this link in the chat box for folks, and there's information about the stakeholder meetings and a link to comment forms. But you know, I think with that, I just wanted to maybe plant some seeds and see if there's any interest in voluntary efforts. You know, I see that I have permission to say this, but the folks at CDOT are trying to identify funding to support activities like this, and including funding possibly for your area. So that's not a promise, but they said it's okay to say that they're working on it. And I think Andy and John, you may have heard that already. But there's more to come on that soon. So yeah, I guess with that, does anyone have any questions or thoughts? And this could also maybe be something that we, you know, talk about in future meetings as well.
Hi, Richard. This is Monty McVeigh. I have several questions, actually. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so first question is the APCD considering other metrics other than just SOV, like VMTs and or overall GHG emission reductions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, so SLOV is like one of the kind of most common metrics when it comes to these types of rules. But basically, we're looking into developing an easy to use dashboard that employers can go in and access, and their employees can access basically to fill out a survey. And the survey will be crafted in a way to collect information that will show us like VMT and associated emissions. And yeah, so in that way, we'll have an idea of the baseline. And then as ongoing like annual or biannual surveys are done, we'll have an idea of progress, not only the SOV rate, but emissions and VMT as well. So yeah, we are planning to look at that as well.
Okay, good. Because the reason I bring that up is because you're going to have several employers that, you know, may be able to do a good job at reducing VMTs, but struggle with increasing SOVs. And then you got to take into consideration fleet applications, you know, delivery services that are not going to be able to reduce VMTs. They're not going to change your SOVs, but they could possibly target GHG reductions associated with cleaner fleet applications. So I guess all I'm trying to imply here is that the more options, the more flexible, the more success that you'll have moving forward. The second question I had is, how are you planning to baseline?
Yeah, that's another good question. So we've been meeting with folks from the TMAs up in the Denver area and the MPOs up there and the RAC to basically we're having work group sessions on how to work out all the specifics of the baseline, like the methodology and the survey as well. There's a handful of folks who have some great experience in all this. But I think like generally the idea is, you know, and this is tricky because I don't know, in talking with the TMAs, it's just kind of a hard nut to crack or something. It's hard to get perfect when you survey employees. But basically, employees will be asked how they typically commute to work. So you know, it's collecting that reported information and then compiling it in a way, where you can see the overall results of the employees at the work site.
Well, the rule is based on a 2005 baseline. So what kind of flexibility is going to be provided for companies that have to comply with this with respect to baselining?
Well, yeah, that's so the 2005 number won't come into effect for ETRIP, because basically the baseline is going to be, where the company is at, at the time that the rule goes into effect, and once that timeline is kind of set in motion. So we won't be asking folks like, how did your company, how are people doing back in 2005?
So I guess the thing that I'm kind of warning you of is you can't necessarily baseline off of a 2020 COVID baseline, because obviously you're hitting a maximum application of employers maximizing to the extent that they can, teleworking, alternative work schedules. So you need to be looking at a post-COVID baseline at a minimum, because if you baseline off a COVID year, you're not going to be able to achieve any additional reductions. You kind of know what I'm saying? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're definitely considering that. Thank you. That's a really good point. So is the APCD not looking to implement this outside of non-attainment strictly because of staffing that's required to execute the program? And is there the intention of eventually taking this statewide? Basically, I think the thinking was that Denver is the area with that's in non-attainment for the ozone standards, and that's where a bulk of the reductions can be made. And that's where the majority of large employers are as well. So I think that was one of the big considerations for making that decision. And I also like transit is better up there as well, the transit systems. So based on that, and I think the decision was to just focus on this area. And also there are lots of TMAs in that area, and there aren't TMAs outside the non-attainment area. And the TMAs and, Dr. Cog is really well suited to provide support as well with their Way to Go program. So I think that was, all those considerations kind of, each played a role in the overall decision. And then, as far as will it be considered for other areas outside the non-attainment area in the future, I can't say. The other thing too is, as with all rulemakings, the Air Division basically proposes a draft to the Air Quality Control Commission, and they're the ones who basically decide what will happen. So I can't say how what their views, how the outcome will play out, especially down the road in the future. But right now it's only being considered for the Denver non-attainment area. Okay, well, I'll just caution you then that if it's not going to be applied statewide, you're going to have incentives to get other companies outside of the non-attainment area to entertain trip reduction type programs.
Yeah.
Have you guys discussed what some of those incentives might potentially be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's much of an incentive, but the group that's working on this for the non-attainment area was definitely interested in, in making like the resources that are developed for the program in the non-attainment area available to companies outside of the non-attainment area. So like we're going to put together a toolkit for employers, basically to make it as easy as possible for them, to implement and develop these types of plans for their work sites. So at least the resources, like from that perspective, will be available. But aside from that, I think one incentive is also just clearly showing the benefits and how for certain employers, based on the characteristics of their company and, their employees, where they are, it actually can be a good return on investment, but it just depends on lots of different, factors. And then another thing is it's usually almost always a benefit for the actual employee because they save money on, fuel savings and less wear and tear on the vehicle, and things like that. So I think, I think you hit on a good point. It is difficult to roll out voluntary programs like this, because of the lack of incentives. But I think, I think if we do get some movement going or maybe some key large employers do it and they're examples for other employers in the area, it could catch on more. But
yeah, I think you're going to see a big reduction as a result of COVID. And I think, you're going to have a lot of companies and businesses that are going to have a new post-COVID standard that is going to have an overall reduction in their vehicle miles traveled for commuters. But I don't know how you're going to be able to capture that unless your baselining tool is going to be looking at a pre-COVID, a during COVID, and a post-COVID baselines. So I guess how sophisticated is the tool going to be, and will the tool be able to capture make and model of types of cars to account for emissions associated with different vehicle types that go into your VMT calculations, or do you have any idea on that?
That's our hope right now, that it will be sophisticated to that level. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some sorry, yeah. There. I think we could maybe build off some of the work that's been done by Dr. Cog with their platform to incorporate that. Sorry, I cut you off.
That's all right. I was just going to say, I think you're going to see some significant GHG reductions that are going to remain in place with, just kind of a new post-COVID era. But if you guys, if you can't capture that with your baselining efforts from a pre-COVID, and since the rule is tied back to 2005 baseline, I would think you guys would want to be able to capture all the GHG reductions that are occurring that are going to remain in place on a post-COVID era. And just like what you were hitting on before, where employers are realizing savings associated with, teleworking and flexible work schedules. But if you guys don't capture that, it's just something to think about with your baselining efforts. Over.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your feedback, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Dana Wojtak. I would just like to also ask Monty, you had asked about incentives. Do you or do other folks in this group have any ideas of incentives that they would be looking for?
Well, a rule requirement would be a great incentive. Yeah, I think, we're gonna get back to, whatever our new normal is gonna be. I mean, it's not gonna be to the extent that we have endured during COVID. But by the same time, we are still looking at much increased and flexibility with telework and alternative work schedules that will have a significant impact on our VMTs going forward. And I can't speak to that across the board, but just in general for DoD, it's a big eye opener. That's really opened the door for us on expanding and enhancing and encouraging teleworking and flexible work schedules beyond anything that we'd ever done previously. Over.
So are you suggesting that you would like to be included in this rule?
I was asking if you guys were looking to apply this statewide. I assume you're not doing that simply because of the resources it takes to manage such an undertaking. And I encourage you guys to initially kick it off with the non-attainment area, get the bugs worked out before you apply it statewide, because you are going to have other, Denver obviously has other opportunities that some of the other more rural areas are not going to. And that's why I was kind of alluding to up front, was to make sure that the rule is going to be flexible on providing a variety of metrics, not just single occupancy vehicle ridership, but VMTs, and like I said, with fleet applications, they're not going to be able to target either one of those, but there's fleet, clean fleet conversion applications where they can have significant reductions on emissions overall. Over.
Well, thank you. That helps. I think we are considering, other options. Obviously, when you look at greenhouse gases, transportation is eclipsed or will be eclipsing. Electric generation is one of the more significant contributors in the state. So obviously we'll continue to evaluate options to reduce greenhouse gases. But I would also suggest that part of what we're doing in the Denver metro area is needed for ozone. And I know this group has been, actively, engaging and coming up with your ozone advanced program. So this may be something that you may want to consider, kind of getting behind on a voluntary basis. Obviously, I think we're all going to be watching, what happens in terms of this proposal this year, and obviously trying to work through the bugs. But the more you're kind of following that and understanding what those bugs are so that you can weigh in, should this need to be expanded statewide, I think you would be better poised to do that.
Dina, one of the things that we're looking at was, like I said, kind of doing a pre-COVID, a during COVID, and a post-COVID baseline. Not quite sure what our new normal is going to be. And that's going to vary from different, organizations across the board within DoD. And, because you got multiple DoD entities on every military installation. So they're all going to have their own spin on how they're going to go to their new normal. There's going to be certain applications that, if you're working on the ZipperNet, classified systems, obviously that's going to draw you, require you to be in the office. So, there's going to be some functions, but I guess is all I'm saying is I know that COVID is going to have a big impact moving forward on the greenhouse gas roadmap goals. That's going to stay in place. And I would just try to encourage you guys to try to capture that. We're going to try to do it at least for bases here in Colorado. So.
Yeah, I hear you, and I'm glad you guys are looking at that. And I think we are trying to all leverage that because, a year ago, I don't know that we all knew that we could work as well as we do from home.
Exactly.
For the most part. And so it's opened our eyes, all of our eyes. And so we are trying to capitalize on the things that we have learned from this past year. So thank you very much for your comments.
Right. And getting over the whole stigma of teleworking and Like I said, it's been a big eye opener within the Department of Defense. And I know we're going to see a lot of that sustained moving forward. Obviously not to the extent that we've incurred through COVID, but it will have a significant reduction when you compare it to pre-COVID era. Over.
It's good to hear.
If there's not any more questions or anything about the presentation, I did note that Rick put his link over here in the chat for you guys, and I'll also include it in the minutes for easy access later on. Agenda item number 5, discussion, was postponed until a future meeting. So that brings us to member entity announcements. If anybody has anything they want to bring to the group here. None? All right, quiet group. Items for future AQTC meetings. Looks like a 2019-2020 Air Quality Control Commission annual report discussion will be on your agenda later on. Is there any other items you guys want to see on your future agendas? Okay, with that then it brings us down to adjournment.
Jessica,
Yes, ma'am.
sorry, I'm pokey and I couldn't get to my button there quick enough.
No problem.
Could we in the future have Teresa from, I want to say she's from CDOT. She might be CDPH&E, but somebody to come and talk about the greenhouse gas perspective from the CDOT transportation rule aspect?
Sure, I'll pass that along. I'm going to put it in the minutes. Teresa Takushi, I believe that's who's been running those. Yeah, I will forward that on to John and see if he can round that up for us. That'd be good.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure. All right. If we don't have any other things we want to talk about, then that brings us to adjournment. So if you guys are okay with that, we'll call it good to go at 1:49.
Actually, I had one extra comment.
Okay.
For the advanced program, one of the things we might want to consider is a voluntary survey that does look at a pre and a post-COVID baseline with respect to our commutership, and kind of assess what our, the spring's new normal is with respect to, overall potential reductions associated with our new normal. Over.
All right, I went ahead and noted that here to pass that info along. Anything else for the good of the committee? Okay, with that, then we're adjourned. It's 1:50. Thank you.